Welcome to Friend Church. My name is Vince. However many months ago when I planned this talk, I thought, I should talk about the historical Jesus in politics. That should be an easy message, right? The last couple of weeks I was thinking, who is the dumb moron who picked this one? And then I checked the news a couple of days ago and I was like, oh geez. This just got even more complex, didn't it? U.S. dropping bunker busters on Iran. Someone sent me a picture of the new map of the world, and there's just an ocean now where Iran is. And I was like, eesh. This topic isn't just something that you think, it's just theoretical. I'm going to go to church and talk about something that doesn't really matter in my life, but this one kind of matters. Kind of a lot, huh? Through this message, if you feel certain parts of you coming up, and if you don't know what I mean by parts, last two series will get you dialed in. If you hear the voice of parts showing up, just be kind to them today. A lot's going on. There's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. That's okay. Just honor it. We're going to keep moving, though, because we don't need to just have that part running our lives. Friend Church, we have a value. Can you throw it up for me, friend? We value each person's unique spiritual journey. This isn't one of those values you put up as a poster on the wall. You know, our values are courage, and no one even does anything courageous in the organization. This one we live by. How you live your life, we believe, is yours to figure out. It's not easy, but it means that I will never tell you, nor will Jeff, how you should vote. Because we believe that's part of your unique spiritual journey. And everybody, we believe, is on a different journey. We all start at a different place. We're currently at a different place, and we're going to a different place. And so, as I do this message, there is no time in this message, regardless of my language, regardless if you can kind of feel part of Vince sneaking through, there's no part where I'm trying to tell you how you need to handle your politics. Fair? Okay. So let me jump in by telling you a bit of my story. I grew up in southern Manitoba, which is the central location for Mennonites. I know you're all thinking, women with their head covered and the funny jackets. Those are Hutterites. Those are our religious cousins. We wear less funny clothes. Technically, growing up, I grew up culturally Mennonite, which means I didn't attend a church with Mennonite in its name, but I can swear in Low German. I'm literally planning a trip there. It's completely dedicated to eating Mennonite food the entire time I'm there. So when I come back 100 pounds heavier, it's okay. It's just cultural. But one thing that Mennonites and Anabaptists, again, the overarching term is Anabaptist. Mennonites are in there, Hutterites are in there, Amish are in there, a whole bunch of groups. But the Mennonites and all the people in the Anabaptist movement have one thing that's in common. They have many things, but here's one. They are pacifists. When they look in the Bible and hear the words of Jesus, all they see is, you shall not go to war. You shall not kill another human being. Full stop. It doesn't matter what's happened. It doesn't matter who showed up in your house uninvited. The answer is, you shall not kill somebody. They take this extremely seriously. I have a story of my grandfather, my dad's side. He was, during the Second World War, the conscription officer was coming around to conscript men of fighting age, and he was that. He took his rifle that he only used for hunting, please understand that, only used for hunting, and he hid it because they were looking for people who were of the right age and who had the means. And he didn't want them to think that he could possibly kill someone else, so that he could honor his religious tradition. What he thought Jesus said to him. Thou shalt not kill. Full stop. He never went to war. Now, it's strange that when you hear the Mennonites talk, Jesus tells us not to kill. You think, well, they clearly have it all figured out, right? Until you realize that that's just one perspective of this story. I'm very obsessed with anyone who pisses off the Pope. I think that's hilarious. The Pope is like the person who's supposed to be the nicest in the world, especially Francis. That guy was like unbelievably nice. So when someone pissed him off, that made me howl, and I read the articles. Lo and behold, it's Vice President Vance. Now, please, I am not picking sides, and I don't want you to do that either. Vance, I think, out of devotion and his understanding of the Bible and Jesus and what he needs to do, said, actually, there's a way that we stratify the world, how we love. Can you throw it up for me, friend? He said, the first person you love is your family. Then you love your neighbor. Then you love your community. Then you love your fellow citizen. And then after all that, prioritize the rest of the world. So here's the thing. He believes, I think, that this is the commandment from Jesus. So if somebody is threatening your family and they're down the chain, of course you can go to war with them. You can kill them to protect your family because this is the order that it works in. And I can understand it. If someone tried to break into our house and attack my wife, I have feelings about that. Not Mennonite feelings. When you look at it from this point of view, if you say in your mind, this is what Jesus says, war is justified, isn't it? In certain situations, not just willy-nilly. Here's the fascinating thing I've noticed. People say to me all the time, oh, I know how Jesus would vote. And I'm always like, really? Yeah, see? He would vote to go to war. Or if you talk to a Mennonite, you'd hear something completely different. They'd be like, well, no, of course we can't go to war. That's wrong. Because Jesus says so. Question. How is it two well-meaning, I think, groups of people who are saying that they are devout to the Christian tradition and to what they believe Jesus has asked them to do, completely on opposite ends of the spectrum? How does that actually work? This is when people will say to me, okay, Vince, you study the Bible, right? I'm like, yeah, I do. So, like, if we get rid of all the translation crap and all the, all the other crap, like, seriously, the historical Jesus, what did Jesus, like, the human, like, the guy who walked down the street and got a rock in his sandal some days was like, ow, 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 crap. Okay, that's better. How would he have voted? Now, remember, we're in a series where we're looking at the Jesus tradition through a particular lens, the lens of his humanity. People have conceptions of him, of all sorts of different other conceptions. That's fine. Those are fine. I'm not trying to belittle them. We're just looking through a particular lens that says, what is the human Jesus? How did he walk through the world? And what can we learn from him? Jeff started it off by saying, the human Jesus actually cared about himself. He took naps. That's also religious for Mennonites, by the way. Sunday afternoon naps, very religious. Jesus was obviously a Mennonite, right? We're going to come back to that. He got angry sometimes. He felt injustice. Jesus did things in and around him that took care of his core self. So people who think that the Christian tradition is all about denying of self, I'm not sure that they read the stories of Jesus very carefully. Last week, I talked about Jesus being an apocalyptic Jewish rabbi, which just meant culturally at the time, they said, the world's not really good right now because evil's winning. Don't worry, there's going to be an apocalypse. where good wins. And all the people who are good are going to get blessed. Everything's going to be good. You're going to win the lottery and get good jobs and, I don't know, everything's going to be good. Your mortgage will probably be paid off, I'm sure. Culturally, though, they believed it was going to happen. It just didn't happen. And I asked, what happens if we take out the urgency of his message, cultural message, right? It's going to flip. And what if we looked at it from this point of view? How do we take water long term? Not give until it hurts, burn out, and then get jaded and not care about anything. No, pace ourselves. I called it farm pace. How do you give so you can give every day, all day, for the rest of your life? Which brings us back to this message. How would the human Jesus have voted? There's actually only one story where he seems to talk about politics. Can you throw it up for me? Then the religious hardliners went and plotted to entrap Jesus. Half the stories start this way. I don't know why, but whatever. Rabbi, we know you're sincere and teach the way of God and are not corrupted by anyone, for you don't play favorites for your own gain. So we'd like to know. I like how they just butter him up. Isn't that a good starter? That's a lesson right there. So we'd like to know, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? Now, Caesar runs Rome. Rome has occupied Israel. Life is not that good in Israel. So, really what he's saying is, politics in our mind is, who do you vote for? In their mind, it's, do you either rebel or not rebel? See, it's not like Caesar got voted in. That's not how it worked. We don't like him. We're not going to vote him in. No, it's like, we've occupied your country. You're going to do whatever we tell you to do. You pay the taxes we want. So they're essentially saying, okay, do you vote to go follow Caesar, or do you vote to rebel? This is the closest I can find to a political conversation. Can you throw the next line or next slide up for me? But Jesus knew what they were up to and replied, super ninja style, show me the coin used for tax. And they took out a Roman coin, which of course makes sense. They looked at it and asked, whose image is on the coin? To which they replied, Caesar's. And then he said, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God the things that are God. For many people, they're like, well, you need to follow whoever was voted in. The Bible says, and Jesus says, you need to speak, agree with, follow along with, do whatever to whoever was voted in. Jesus seems to do the thing that Jesus often does. People say, is it black or is it white? Is it A or B? And he's like, it's kind of in the middle someplace. The technical term is the third way. I call it ninja. Because it's kind of like you could see, someone's like, do you like this or like that? You're like, actually, no. You're creating a false dichotomy that's not real. So let me show you that your question. A couple weeks ago, I talked about abortion. I said, abortion is such a complex topic. When someone says, are you pro-life or pro-choice? My answer is usually, if you're asking me that question in that way, you haven't thought deeply enough about this issue. Because it doesn't fit anywhere that neat and tidy. Jesus, ninja style. It's the closest we have to him making a political statement. And my reading of it is essentially saying, I'm going to take a pass on your political question and answer a different question. So how would Jesus vote? We still got nothing, do we? We actually do know something, though. We know how the Romans thought, or maybe propagandized, Jesus voting. I don't know if you know the story, but Jesus, at the end of his life, is taken captive by the Romans. And the Romans crucify him. Now, one thing you need to know about crucifixion, that doesn't just mean church. A cross meant something very, very particular in the Roman culture. If they didn't like you and they wanted to kill you, they just kill you. It's like they don't put this big fancy cross up and then like hang you up there and then leave you up there for, like, it's way too much work. It's like, oh my goodness. The cross was for political dissidents. To say, you go against Pax Romana, which means Roman peace, which is what they cared about. You go against Pax Romana, we will show everybody, you do not go against us. So they figured out the most painful, the longest lasting way to kill a human being. So for a day or two, you can sit there and watch your loved ones gasp and die slowly in excruciating pain. It's Rome's way of saying, don't be crossing us. And just in case we don't think that's enough, they put a sign above his head, King of the Jews. For people who grew up in a church, that has a theological meaning. No. For them, it's political. This person said he was the king of the Jews. He is not the king of the Jews. Therefore, we will show you. This is what people who say they're king of the Jews, this is what happens to them. The Romans seemed to think Jesus was voting for rebellion. And they killed him like a rebel. Does that help answer the question how Jesus would vote? It's interesting, the historical Jesus, this whole lens that we've been looking through. When my Mennonite brothers and sisters, if I can say it that way, when they look at Jesus, they see a pacifist. When my friends who are anarchists see Jesus, they see a rebel. When my friends who are socialists see Jesus, they see a socialist. When my friends who are liberals, they see a liberal, conservative. There's a guy named Albert Schweitzer, about 100 years ago. He took all the research of the historical Jesus. It was just when it was in its infancy. People just started to look, wait a second, what if we looked at the human Jesus? He spent a long time studying them all, and he went, wait a second. It's like all you groups were looking for the historical Jesus, but you just look down into a well. Anyone grow up with wells in your life? Do you know what a well is? Water at the bottom, right? A little murky. He's like, you look down there through the murk, and you saw reflected back to you Jesus, which was just a murky version of you. Isn't that, I'm going to say it this way, troubling? Because that critique is not just for those guys over there. Those anarchists over there. I think I do it too. Chances are you might also. How would Jesus vote? Surprisingly, just like me. Isn't that why people say, I know how Jesus is going to vote? He's a pacifist. He orders love in a certain way. He cares about this, not that. He cares about that, not this. Because we do. Or at least if Albert Schweitzer's critique is accurate, and I think it is. So where does that leave us? My coach at this point was like writing on the notes, I don't like this. Give me something solid here. Because uncertainty is not easy, is it? Especially when we're in a world right now that has more uncertainty than it's had in a long time. If we could ground ourselves in, okay, but Jesus would do this. The historical Jesus would do that. I'll just do that. I don't have to think very hard because I just do what he says. And yet when we look through the tradition, it's uncomfortably empty. As I look through my life the last little while, and kept looking through into that well and going, oh yeah, dirt biker. Stop for people on the side of the road because he knows how to change a tire. How do we overcome this propensity to see in Jesus? Actually, it's not even that. Let me say it this way. You can hear all these stories of Jesus, but it's the ones that resonate with us, that are so close to us. I think that's why we do it. It's not that we're deliberately trying to make Jesus into our own image. It's that it just feels natural to do it. So I thought, what if we take the most unnatural saying of Jesus and we applied this to how we vote? Now, be very careful here. I am not telling you that Jesus would have voted along the lines of this saying. That would just be creating another picture in that well again. I'm asking, what does this saying impact your unique spirituality, how your politics work, and how you would vote? It's not to give you certainty again to say, okay, we're just going to do this, and anyone who does this is right. No, it's just black and white thinking again. Frank, can you throw it up for me? Jesus says this, you're familiar with the old written law, love your friend and its unwritten companion, hate your enemy. I'm challenging that. I'm telling you to love your enemies. Love there is not the word for eros. It's not love as in I'm attracted to you, I think you're beautiful, none of that. Love in this context says I'm taking their interests and keeping it in mind as important. Ooh. I liked it better when it was like, think they're attractive. What would it look like to use this to color your votes? And again, I'm not trying to tell you that Jesus says this is how you need to vote. I'm asking you to let this challenge the picture you have of Jesus. If you would normally vote left, what would it look like to vote in the interest of the right also? Well, that's tricky. And if you're on the right, how would you vote in the interest of the left also? This is where my brain kind of goes like, you can't do that. It's black and white. You either can pick one side or the other. Really? I've been thinking a lot lately about why we polarize so hard. Isn't it because we look over here and say, this is our group, but those people are bad? What if you just ask yourself the question, if I assume that those people are not bad, not enemies, what if I just asked, what do you care about? Our political conversations is not that. Our political conversation is, I'm right, you're wrong, piss off, you're wrecking everything. What would it look like to just look at the other group and say, what do you care about? What pieces of this puzzle matter to you? What issues are important to you? This is hard, isn't it? Now let me hit one more objection. Can you throw up this slide for me of the relational circles? A lot of this conversation depends on where you sit in our model. Again, this is just a model. It's not true. It's just a way of thinking. For many of us, we're at the bottom of this model. I against them. There's you, in those people on the other side. And you are not connected. In fact, you're against them, right? You have this framing of the world that says it's either we win or you win. This is, I don't know if you guys follow this, but have you ever noticed that we'll vote in, say, a government on the left. They build this whole incredible infrastructure of things. Then the right gets voted in. They tear that all down, build a whole bunch of things over here. And then the left gets voted in. They tear that down and build it over here. And it's just like they literally just piss away money. I'm not trying to judge it. What I'm trying to point out is how this framing functions in the world. When you're and I against them, it's all about, it's either we win and you lose. That's the only way we think of this. When you move up in your spiritual journey into the way we talk about it, and you start to going, wait a second, what if I look at them and say, what do they need? How do I care about them? Now, if you grew up in the church, here's what can happen. You'll automatically just suppress yourself and be like, oh, to be a Christian, I have to just give everything up. There's nothing I can want. I just have to give and give and give, no matter if I think it's good or not. That's just a framing. That's not necessarily the only way to be a Christian. In fact, we say this is what works better. I have a view, you have a view. How do we hold them in balance? Have you ever seen a couple together at a party? They're an I against them. One of them starts telling a story, the other one has to correct them, and then they spend 10 minutes fighting over whether or not it was a Thursday or a Tuesday. Does it even matter? I against them. That's 10 minutes of my life I will never get back, figuring out if it was a Tuesday or a Thursday. I don't care. Just tell me the end of the story. Politically, we can feel it too. I against them. We all live in this country. We all share different ideologies. Some people think this is important. Some people think that's important. It's okay. We don't have to be the same. That's why I started with that value. But how do we look at honoring them while still honoring us? And this is the point where you say, but Vince, is this even possible? I don't know. Take it up with Jesus. Is it going to be an easy thing to do? No. Even this framing of my relationship. Quite often I find myself in this place of going, can I take? Can I give? How do we be in we? I think that's when I'm in the sweet spot. When I'm wrestling it out, going, wait, how does this work? How do we balance what I want and what you want? Sometimes I pick a movie that's a little bit off. My wife's like, was this the right movie? Yeah, you're right. Let's stop that one. I'll come up with a better one. What if we hold this value, this spiritual value, in our political conversations? What if we looked at ourselves and said, how I treat my enemy matters? Sure, there's times when it's like this. There will always be times like that. But not all of the conversation is by definition black or white, is it? Jesus asks us, what would it look like to vote in a way that honors the needs of the other group? In 1940s, Canada, the World War II was happening, and Canada was sitting on the edge, looking in, going, yeesh. It's not here right now, but can you put up the Zelensky quote for me? What did Zelensky say in the Oval Office? You have a nice ocean between you and the war. You don't feel it now, but you'll feel it in the future. I think that's where Canada was. So the Nazis are over there, but like, how big is that ocean? And at some point, this is going to come here. Our government said we need to do something. We need to enter the war. And so they voted to conscript. At this point, it was men of fighting age. But they didn't just make it blanket. You see, at the time, think about how much emotion was tied to that war. At any day, this could come across the ocean and destroy us. Think pandemic level anxiety and fear, and just times it by like 100, I think. I can see people going, oh, we will send every fighting age male to fight this war to protect our country. But that's not how they voted. I don't know why they did it, but this is how it goes in my mind. They realize there's people on the other side, and they voted in a way that said people who for religious reasons don't want to fight can be conscientious objectors. My grandfather on my mother's side was one. He was Mennonite, and his tradition said, not only can you not go to war, you cannot support war, you can't even work in a factory that works on munitions. Nothing. So Canada made a way for him to run a grain elevator in Low Farm, Manitoba. If you've never heard of it, don't worry, it's like 14 people or something, I don't know. He made a way that people in Canada could eat. That's how he served his country in a way that honored his unique spiritual journey. I don't know why Canada did it, but I gotta say, that's pretty ninja, isn't it? How do you vote in a way that honors the people that are different from you? How do you vote in a way, maybe it's not even vote, maybe it's how do you understand their position? Maybe it's how do you just be open to it? Maybe it's there's part of your area that you could black and white it, and they disagree, but maybe this could be a little bit grayer. You could say, yeah, actually, you know what? Your point matters here. Maybe it's even, I don't agree, but I hear you. Could you, as an act of spirituality, look at your enemy and say, some part of what you care about matters to me? I started the message telling you that I don't know how Jesus is going to vote. I would have voted. I don't. If you think you got that figured out, buy me a beer, we'll figure it out together. It'll be great. I don't think Jesus even encouraged us different ways to vote. The admonition to love your neighbor or love your enemy, it wasn't tied to this, but it helps me understand my propensity to try and make Jesus look just like me. Believe the things I believe. Albert Schweitzer's critique was a pretty good one. Jesus that we believe in looks a lot like us. So today as you go from here, even outside of voting in politics, how are you going to treat the people who are not part of your group? People you don't agree with. People who see the world differently. As an act of your unique spiritual journey. That's a little different than telling you how to vote, isn't it? May we live as love in the best way that we know how. And may the world be changed by it. Amen. Have a great week, everyone.